Hello and welcome to Historical Humans Heritage. And on today's episode, we are looking at the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Fortress of Suomenlinna, which is in Finland and is a beautiful example of an 18th century Swedish fortress.
Yep. Yeah, it's a Swedish fortress in Finland. Um, that alone is enough to give it some historical significance just from keeping the context alive that Sweden used to run Finland.
Hey, they were partnered in a country, but yes, there were a lot of fortifications built, and this is one beautiful example of what is often referred to as a star fortress because of its lovely shape and defensive fortifications. And this was built at the furthest extent of a little peninsula, so right on the water. So right front and center for any attackers to see or encounter as they were going into the
Yep.
Bay of Helsinki.
It's oh yeah, definitely. And it's very important. And one of the fun things with this particular Star Fortress is it's an adaptation of a existing fortress in France of all places. We did cover it. It's another UNESCO World Heritage Site called Vauban. And that fortress was deemed a UNESCO World Heritage Site because it was considered revolutionary in the terms of, defensive fortifications. And here is kind of the pinnacle of the principles put together at Vauban, decades later being used to create basically the ultimate fortress out here in the fjords of Scandinavia.
Yeah, but you see really high stack stone walls that give great vantage points over the nearby attackers. You see little windows in the wall that allow for cannon and gunfire. You see the fortifications also have ramparts that would allow people to hide behind them. It's an interesting idea of fortification more so than what had previously been utilized, but it was done with such a Nordic flair that I think is so fascinating.
Yeah. One of the things that gives it that Nordic flair is how it adapts to the geography. The traditional star fort style would have everything compacted into a singular space of increased elevations for defense and depth. What happens here is they've actually spread the fortress out so much so that it's built on six separate islands
Wow.
that together combine to form a single wall of death. This is the Voltron of fortresses.
Yeah, the key point is it's there to defend against a naval attack on the city, and it really does just that. It really provides for an imposing defense, and you could see the large cannons that they had mounted. They were not playing any sorts of games, and I can't imagine why Sweden and Finland had fights at this time. No
Yeah,
reason at all.
yeah, absolutely. So, but that's not actually where it gets its first. What's the word? Oh, shall we say battle experience?
Oh no.
It gets its first experience when the Russians come and take over Finland.
God dang it, always.
Then the Russians actually build up the fortifications even more because they're Russians. And they know that if they somehow got in here, someone else can, and they will not like that.
I just imagine the Russians got in. They're like, all right, Ivan, Pyotr, Alexander, you guys start building bigger walls. Well, why, Commander? Well, because if we got in here, then the Swedish could get in here.
Yeah. Because I only had to stack 20,000 of your dead comrades at the gate before I could finally climb over.
But it also includes a dry dock, sandbanks, barracks, and other buildings that were added during that time period.
Yeah.
And it really also developed along with additional systems that made it a more modern fortress. And the beautiful part in my mind is when Finland gained its independence in 1917, they renamed the fortress to be Suomenlinna, or Fortress of Finland, and it was
Yep.
both a garrison and harbor.
Yep. I believe before that it was known as Sveaborg. which I believe is Seafort.
Oh, those Nordics and their practical naming conventions.
Yeah. But
And
yeah, no, this fortress has reliably served three different nations, from the Kingdom of Sweden to the Russian Empire to the Republic of Finland. And that's because everyone who takes it over recognizes just how good of a position it holds and how well it holds it, that they go through and they fix whatever needed to be modernized to solve the problem they created to get in.
it's very interesting too because after World War II, the fortress went into decline, and it was converted to a lot of civilian purposes, including apartments, workshops, private and public services, cultural purposes, to the point where it became its own district within the city of Helsinki and has a population of 850 inhabitants.
Yeah, it's basically its own town, which is very fun. A lot of times we talk about history and how fortresses become towns because people start settling around them. No, this time we built the fortress next to the existing town, and then all the people started moving in.
It's very cool too because the fortress shows the different inhabitation periods, and though it only has a few buildings left from the Finnish period, it still has its own distinctive identity, and it remains pretty well intact and has really been a key focus point to preserve, where they've even used traditional construction methods to preserve the property, though they do also note that a sharp rise in sea level or increased rainfall could affect the property, and that's where it falls into the protection and management plans. As you know, if you're a frequent watcher of this channel or of this series, I love a good management plan. And this site has one that was developed in 2007, though they did end up revising it in 2013, that really helps them identify potential risks and issues. One of which that they're seeing is accelerated erosion of the coastline and of the structures. Pretty much, they're seeing a lot of the sandy beaches be eroded away, and they're also seeing damage to some of the structures.
Yep. And one of the other things too is, with something so close to an urban center that has also been repurposed for modern use and has, an entire population living in it, the threats to the site actually don't include human activity because of how serious the buffer zone is in these management plans. The buffer zone goes all the way to downtown Helsinki on one side, and all the way to the modern military base on the other. And it creates this nice little gap where you can build nothing. And I don't know, it's just one of those things, like when we see urbanization and things around urban centers, they're always threatened by human beings. And for once, it's just nature.
Damn, nature, you scary. And
Yeah.
it is also protected by federal laws. There's an ancient act of 1963, as well as the church on the property being protected by the Church Act of 1994. And then it's entirely owned by a governing government agency, the Ministry of Education and Culture, and it's responsible for the restoration, and it's guided by a 1974 management plan. So it's very interesting. It's very cool. It's a cool mix of historic structures in a modern context.
Yeah. It's a very nice combination. It shows that this is both a piece of history and a living monument in a very real sense. And I think between the township that lives in it and the way the combination of military bases around it and natural buffer zone work creates a nice blending where people can exist without destroying what was.
It's a nice way to show they can live in concert with the history. And I think that's actually probably a great point for us to wrap up today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know your thoughts down below, and we will see you in the next video.